Jai Hind, Jai Bharat, and welcome to Dev Talks. This is Aadi. I have with me Lieutenant General Rakesh Sharma, who will put us a little different insight as to the Chinese position in this world. The Western narrative is that the Chinese are bus finished. It's written off, and one slight push from the Western, forces would break the door of the Chinese, and Xi Jinping will fall, and this and that and the other. Although a lot of it has some value, the Chinese are declining, there is no question. But the biggest question is that are they now not a credible threat, especially to us as a neighbor of China, as one of their targets, if I may say that loosely. And we've recently seen the events which he's doing in Philippines by laying literally a maritime boundary around the Scarborough Shoal. So let's dig into this and find out: is this Chinese desperation? Is this Chinese decline? Or is China really over? Sir, hello and welcome to the show. And hope to learn from you on a very different perspective, which is seldom spoken about.
Thank you, Adi, and thank you for inviting me. It's always a pleasure to come to your show and have a chat. And what I have been saying is that there have been contradictions, there are paradoxes across about China. It's been there for a long time. Larger issues that we learn about China is a Western perspective, which comes out in plenty of Western media, and which shows that their Chinese are they are peaking. I mean, larger narrative is saying China is peaking. It has fallen off the miracle path, and there is an aging population. There is very high debt, very high local debt. There is meddling government in the Chinese, which have caused so much of problem. The real estate has gone down. There is global pandemic and caused immense amount of agitations in China, and the aftermath weakened its economy. There is real estate trouble. There are so many issues, including unemployment, which some figures recently said 20%, 21%. And there, of
Hmm.
course, there are demographic pressures. If you add all this together, it gives you a feel of a declining country. Now, you see, we are not in the same basket as the Western nation. We have an adversary on our borders, an adversary of not today or yesterday, but adversary of 7 decades. And this adversary nature has gone much larger extent in the course of last 3 years. We have to be pragmatic about whether Chinese are declining or Chinese are as rising, and that's the issue I wanted to debate as to how do we get pragmatically clear as to what is China all about. And that's the logic which I wrote also, saying that despite the fact that their economy is maybe having headwinds, and obviously they're having headwinds, there's no doubt about it.
Yeah, yeah.
But maybe, even if they're 18.1 trillion previous year, they will be 19 trillion this year. Even if they grow at 5.5%, which is a way low growth for Chinese economy, but worldwide it is fairly a larger amount of growth in GDP. And then 5.5% means $1 trillion increase in their GDP in this year. No other nation of the world can claim to be growing by $1 trillion. That's 5% growth for them. India, even if you get 6% growth, 7% growth, is off $3.5 trillion our economy. So we are getting $3.5 trillion ka 6% or 7%, which is not that much. Even the Americans, which is the largest economy, 25 trillion, if they grow at 3%, it comes to say 0.6, $0.7 trillion. Largest rise GDP alone will be China still. They will be growing that much. To say that they are going down, okay, fine, yeah. Tangible terms you must have a look. There are also issues of real estate sector. Indeed, the real estate sector, 30% growth of real estate sector, 30% was their involvement into the GDP. But if we go back to see, say, Japan's rise, Japan rose on the backbone of real estate sector till 80s. Then the real estate gets saturated at a time. And the growth has to now differentiate itself to other avenues. Japan is still growing, maybe minuscule, but it's still growing over the years. But the real estate sector took up saturation. Maybe the Chinese real estate saturation sector is also saturated, and they have decided to branch off towards say consumerism, internal consumerism. See, the growth of their country was based on export orientation or real estate sector or internal consumption. Um, and of course BRI, you add all this to it. But if real estate sector is finished or it is not able to grow that far, they would obviously branch out to this different levels. So since you and me are students of China for some time, when we take Deng Xiaoping years or Jiang Zemin years or even Hu Jintao years, we were growing at say 10. China was growing at 10%, but subsequently they were growing at about 5 to 6%. In COVID times, they dropped down to 2 3%. Many countries went negative. Chinese are still going 2 3% at in the COVID times, and now they are back into 5.5. So to say you can compare it with 10% growth, fine, but they are still growing. So to say the economy is gone to doldrums, I think this is gross exaggeration in this manner, and we must be pragmatic as to saying they are still growing. It matters to us because that growth of economy also correlates to their defense budget. It's that growth that matters. So to say that the economy has gone down and because of real estate sector, well, one can also say that they have redecided their priorities as to how they will want to change over in this one. People say they have 100% extra apartments built. Possible. Evergrande was to make 1 million houses, they made only 300,000. So there is a problem there. I don't think that you should put all eggs into the real estate basket. There needs to be a differentiation here. The second issue that I raised also, and which I have debated upon, is demography. So many people say that they overcounted their population. Their figures which have come out of China says they overcounted their population by a million, maybe.
Yeah.
And India may have crossed the population of China maybe 5 7 years ago instead of now, because they overcounted. And then there are serious aging problems. Nobody wants to get married. If you want to get married, you don't want to grow a family, and it's all very expensive to do so in China. So there is a issue of demography. Certainly, there will be issue of demography. There will be issue of overage, but I think Chinese are also seemingly attending the issues when people are saying that there will be overage issues. So maybe they are investing in the right manner in other countries like Vietnam or Indonesia to take advantage of the younger demography of other countries. It's the methodology of their doing things. They are giving out assistance to people who want to have a child. So the liberalization on pregnancy times and paternal leaves and maternal leaves and all these things. So they are, you know, regularly every day you hear something. Chinese are trying to ease off something to address something else. So there is movement and in their laws. So many laws are being passed. Each one is not even being analyzed by us. So I think you're right. People are right to say that demography is an issue. But 1.3 billion people here, they will sort out their demography. It's still very large country in that manner. Third issue, I said there's all these. You and me are debating. I'll just finish the third issue here. We've been debating now. People go missing. Now, Singh Gang got missing. Li Shangpo got missing. There were others people missing. Right? Indeed, the people are missing. Whatever the rationale is, it's not nice yet. See, 6 months ago, you appoint a foreign minister. You pick him up from nowhere, from Shanghai, being a foreign minister. You pick up the rocket fellow and make it into defense minister, and selected people in the third term, which is your stronger term, and then you get people got missing. If nothing happens, yeah, there's a reputational issue of a nation. Yeah. You can't have a man who are helm of affairs come and debate it even in India on various issues and talk of normalized border management and control, and you suddenly go missing. Yeah, where did the normalized border management go away? So this is a serious fact. But that's their country, yeah. They do believe like this, yeah. Anybody can go missing. 100,000, 100 journals have got missing in
Mhm.
first term of G's tenure. Missing means missing. The English language just missing means gone. And how many people under in jails and gone away for because of corruption. And despite the fact that there is so much of scare of corruption, they'll put you under behind bars. People are not bothered. Yeah, they're still being corrupt. Yeah, when you know that hundreds and hundreds of journals have been sent away home in some gulag or some wherever they send people like that, they still are corrupt. Yeah. So despite the fact this happens, it is also a reputational issue here. That if
Hmm.
people, despite your strictness on corruption and the discipline commission, etc., still enjoy taking the money under the drawers, well, then there is something not right in the system on this one. So I was raising all these issues, saying that one must be cautious of the fact that there may be a downfall, but that downfall is should not allow us to be complacent about the threat that it born on us. We shouldn't say that they're becoming old. Some people, you and me again have debated earlier. People say they're ill trained, they're not experienced. They have not fought a war from '79 onwards after Vietnam. I will say it's acceptable. Okay, they haven't fought a war. They've been trained. They've been shooting at across Taiwan so much of times, and ships are moving across. But for a man, a person, an institution which thinks about its adversary and purpose of future operations, we must deem it in a manner that if case that they turn out to be ill trained or poorly trained or
Damn good.
inexperienced, that's a bonus.
Damn good.
That's a bonus. That's an advantage. When we fight a
Hmm.
war, we will take that advantage. But today, know your enemy. People said know your enemy. Sun Tzu said know your enemy. Know your enemy, but don't take enemy in a manner to put across saying that he's ill trained and we will be able to. That's not the right way of doing things. That's what I was largely wanting to say. Adi, yours.
No, as a matter of fact, sir, what you've brought out, and I personally also I look into China. As a matter of fact, I'm preparing a presentation with regards to how is Xi Jinping, what all is he doing to kind of stay in power? There's a huge amount of opposition to him. The sheer factor that he has to throw out people tells you that people are not wanting to listen to him. So there are issues, the rocket force and this and that and the other. Whole lot of things are there. But that doesn't mean that one must take this thing lightly. A lot of it is obviously an analysis. And secondly, that uh, the US can afford to take it lightly. It's far away. We can't. Simple as that. So I think that's a very very pragmatic way of looking at it. So, but how do you look at the Chinese kind of picking a certain sector to show their aggressiveness? Now they have options. They have the India option, which kind of they're little resistant because of their. I can read their writings and stuff like that. They're just wanting not to engage right now. They're wanting to stay away from India. Ki, yaar, just chhod do isko. Let's not engage this entire thing because it creates a lot of other problems for us. Bilaterally there's a problem, and plus they'll push India too far into the west, so they're little not wanting to neither talk nor resolve nor aggressify it, just let it be status quo. Having said that, the same is not true in the South China Sea, sir. We've seen some very aggressive actions with the Philippines. We've seen some very aggressive actions with the Vietnamese. How do you see that opening out? Is this also a way of a lot many commentators in the west would say this is a diversionary tactic for Xi Jinping to arouse a certain amount of nationalism. True, fair enough. But what is he actually trying to do there in the South China Sea?
So, Adi, let me disaggregate a few things.
Sure.
There are issues of sovereignty, and he's been talking sovereignty for a very long time. Xi
Yeah.
Jinping has been speaking sovereignty for the last 5 7 years. It's much beyond territorial integrity. He talks that this is my sovereign territory left to me by my forefathers, and there is just no talking or discussion on sovereignty issues. So, if Scarborough Shoal is a sovereignty issue, if Aksai Chen is a sovereignty issue, well, these are non-debatable issues. These are he has gone beyond discussion because calling it sovereignty issues. So if Philippines is trying to say that okay, Philippines has a new government, unlike the
Bomber
previous.
Marcos. Hmm.
So they have a new government, and they are saying, okay, this Scarborough Shoal is not resolved, and they do all this fishing thing, and the Chinese tie a rope around those areas, and deny you movement across here. The Philippines go and cut the rope. That's a sovereignty issue, and they are not going to relent on issues relating to sovereignty. It hurts the very sentiment of a large population, saying that we are not able to defend your own sovereignty. So for the Chinese, that's not a discussable issue, and that's not debatable issue. So whether it is in Senkaku or Taiwan or South China Sea, Scarborough Shoal, Parcel Islands, or any one of these areas, including Eastern Ladakh, these are issues that they will not debate and they will not relent on. But having put that apart, okay, this is one part of the basket. See, and when we debate China, we have to put things into separate baskets. It's not cumulative together. Like, for example, in our case, a border and an economy cannot be cumulated together. Largely, when we talk about relationship, we add everything together. But here we are now segregating issues. So issues of sovereignty is a part. But despite that, look at the kind of trade that the ASEAN countries have with China. Over $1 trillion. I mean,
Million dollars.
they are way up. Vietnam is being spoken as the next China. Vietnam has got a similar government as Chinese have got. Look at the amount of trade that the Chinese have with Vietnamese, despite the relationship which comes from the island territories or South China Sea or Indonesia for that matter. These separate issues. Chinese have also taken in a big way the Indian push to global South. You know, our leadership in global
Mhm.
South. Despite having these border issues around, they have now in the month of September alone come out with a large document as to how global South must be with China. And that document, which is released officially, shows that yeah, we are the global South leaders. Yeah, we are the end all. When you
Yeah.
say that they are debt traps, so now they're quoting how many countries can you count with debt traps, and are the debt traps exclusively Chinese? Is total debt trap of Sri Lanka related to China? No, Chinese will have 30% of the debt, 70% of debt come from the Western countries, which nobody is talking about, or Zambia for that matter. Their leadership that they're wanting to acquire of the global south is extremely focused and it is pervasive all over. And I think we need to watch out. The second paper, which came out, I think 5 days ago, 3 days ago, 26th of September, and these documents in China are not like casual documents. That these are thrust areas for them, which shows that there is a common global good here he's talking about. Common global destiny. 152 countries have been invited to BRI forum on 15th of October. Future is coming. How many head of 132 countries have already accepted to come for BRI forum. This is the third BRI forum. The 10 years anniversary of BRI, but the third BRI forum started in I think 2019. This BRI forum is supposed to be touted as a big thing now. Country in economic straits, they have problems with Philippines, they have problem with India, they have problem with Japan, and still 152 countries have been invited, 132 have accepted, and more accepting as days are passing. There will be a jamboree which is, I mean, 3 times, 4 times larger than G20, yeah? And they are pushing and they are remodeling. I think they're remodeling the BRI in a manner which is it's absolutely different than what existed previously because they would have learned from the mistakes of the last 1 decade. So what I want to say is that while we do talk about what's happening on in Philippines and South China Sea, but we also say the relationship that these other countries having in a separate basket with China, motherland, and the relationship which is going from leaps and bounds. So there is more to it than only territorial issues.
Hmm. Would you agree that the Chinese now today are kind of taking a different way? Because this global South, why I was snickering, is very funny because till about 5 years ago he wanted to be G2. the global two, the two biggest powers, two udhar main idhar, baki beech mein kaat lete hain, and we just divide it amongst ourselves. And now today he comes around and says, I am no no no, I am a part, I'm the leader of the global south. It's quite a funny change that they're trying to do. This is one thing where I find that they got stumped pretty bad. They didn't kind of know that this particular thing, because previously in the discussions the global south was never mentioned. I've read umpteen number of papers and this and that. They never talked about the global south. All they talked about is reaching the top end and saying, bhai, we are G2 now. So this is a very interesting development. But when you say in South China Sea, so there is a very clear trust balance which is building up, a balance which is building up, not a trust balance, between aggression and trade. And we saw that during the ASEAN, just before that map thing happened and everything like that. This is the first time that the ASEAN kind of pushed back towards the Chinese as a conceited voice. Don't you think that the Chinese somewhere down the line should realize, listen, we are declining ourselves. We don't have the kind of economic power that we thought we would have. Uh, Rather than doing all this, hardcore, this, why don't we just kind of figure out a way to coexist, at least within the region, leave alone the USA? Because the US fight is very difficult to resolve, but within the region, leave alone India, they've got a massive distrust with India. Again, I'm just talking about that South China Sea region. So wouldn't be it be saner for them not to kind of do what they're doing?
Okay, it's very difficult to put yourself into Chinese shoes
Yeah.
and actually
Yeah.
learn about their exact motivations as to why, by logic, what you're saying is right. Why
Hmm.
should you contest with your closest of neighbors? Closest of neighbors, all 10 of these ASEAN countries and East China Sea countries, they are closest of neighbors. With Chinese geography is boxed in, poor geography, very poor geography,
Yeah.
maritime geography, boxed in by all these inimical nations that the Chinese have all around the front. But having said that, it is also important to say that pragmatic people, they would also understand that while this South China Sea is absolutely essential to Chinese for its global ambitions, and Taiwan, if minute you relent on South China Sea and relent on Taiwan, they have no access across to the other world. The entire, starting from Japan to Taiwan to Indonesia to Philippines to Indonesia, and this side the other countries, Malaysia, Vietnam, these are the areas the Chinese have to go out to trade. Everything is dependent on these countries. Dependence on South China Sea and East China Sea is absolutely total. There is nothing land. Of course, things move, but they are very slow and very cumbersome. Finally, he has to make sure that while he has Chinese have to have good relations with the ASEAN countries, and ASEAN countries are also mindful of the fact that China is a large looming country, very powerful around there. So when they start criticizing, they criticize also in muted tones. But having said that, uh, for both ways, they have to say, okay, trade is important. For the Chinese, this area is absolutely important. You're boxed in by Malacca on one
Yeah.
side and Taiwan and Philippines on the other side, and all straits through the Indonesian archipelago and all this. So when you say that the Chinese have to make sure the South China Sea is important. Otherwise, they have no geography. They are only
Hmm.
dependent on all other nations to move ahead. And I will add an issue here about G2 you mentioned. Now, look, there is a lot of talk on multilateralism, and we
Yeah.
talk about multilateralism on and on and on and on, and incessantly and Chinese also talk multilateralism. But do you foresee in next 15, 20 years, foreseeable future, any peer competitor arising for China and United States, coming even close to their, even coming close to their kind of GDP, the economic progress both the countries have, and also the military prowess both these nations have. So even if we become third largest economy, $10 trillion is very spoken about in long term proposition. We become $10 trillion in 15, 20 years. Chinese in 10 trillion, when we become $10 trillion, will be $30 trillion. and the United States maybe 35 or maybe equivalent to that. The G2 is G2, yeah. I mean, where is the multipolar world, yeah? The bipolarism of these two countries, China and United States, will stand for quite some time because they are not going anywhere. They are rising. China is the workshop of the world. Most of the final products made in most of these countries, the intermediate products are coming from China. So even if Vietnam is growing well, Vietnam's intermediate products are coming from China. Our iPhones made, they made a joke about our iPhones. They smell of curry. iPhone 15. But we are producing maybe 5, 7%, 10% of the iPhones. Yeah? Most of the stuff is coming through supply chains, which are all interlinked along with China, Apple City, or from Japan, or from anywhere. So, the fact is that this is not this archaic nature of the great power politics is not going away anywhere in near future. We may want it to happen. We may want it to have polycentrism or multilateralism, but I don't foresee it that there'll be competitors of major kind emanating in the world to China and to United States until unless a black swan happens, until unless there is great amount of calamity happens.
Yeah, which
Yeah.
is, I mean, of course, the law of nature. So that's this thing. So, lastly, I'll just take 2 more minutes, and I wanted to ask you about interesting phenomenon developing within China, which is there is a certain amount of, I won't call it pessimism, but an understanding that we've we wanted to be there and this and that, but today the writings from China are saying, okay, fine, we won't be number one, but let's be number two. What does that tell you? It's, I won't call it pessimism. I'd call it more realism, which I guess they missed out the previous times. There's a huge, of course, debate which talks about the GDP and this and that. That, keeping that aside, I want to talk about the factor that they themselves today say, okay, fine, let's relent and stay at two.
I don't see it not as part of the 2049 ambition, the 2035,
Yeah, of
2049
course,
ambition.
but I'm talking about writers that
That,
are
that ambition, but maybe there are writers who saying, okay, let's remain number two. I'm not even sure whether there are parameters that we work on which emanate from China have truth in it. How much are lies, which I quoted in this one. They lie all the time. When somebody says instead of
that's the problem.
dollars, their defense budget is $700 billion. The Americans have said 700 and 300 is a vast difference. You can say 325. When you're saying 325, you're saying $700 billion, two and a half times more. Well, then the truth is hidden here. And then, of course, GDP is also a problematic area because many things are hidden under the word GDP. There is informal sector which doesn't get reflected in GDP. So there may be exaggeration, there may be some non-exaggeration. So I won't say this one. Now the Chinese, you see, okay, all this is learning experience. I'm a student. I've learned myself. There may be a symmetrically large nation which has got you have asymmetrical with adversarial relations with,
Hmm.
then you know that you have to compete with that nation in all forum and all fora, which is from economics to geopolitics to politics to military and compete in every country for trade. You are competing. You decide that to that asymmetrically large nation which you can't compete with for the time being in that manner in comprehensive national power, you compete where you want to compete with. And you actually cross over. You fight that country. And fight, I'm not saying dishum, no scuffles. You fight with that country where you want to fight. And you take long strides in those areas where you show that you have better prowess than even that asymmetrically large nation. For
True.
example, the SP study 44 key developing technologies. Chinese are 37 technologies better than United States is. So they would have decided, okay, we can't compete in in economically we can't reach Chinese, the Americans in that thing. So we may be second fiddle, maybe second even in next 10 years on. People are saying that previous graphs that showed China will cross United States may not be true, and it may be a longer time before they can reach it. But there be many other areas where the Chinese will attempt to cross over and take advantage of the Chinese. So say, for example, patents being filed. Huawei filed nearly 6,000 patents last year as one international patents. But you say no other worldwide company has ever filed patents of this level. So they are technologically developing in a manner that they would be leaders in their own right, against all competitors.
Hmm.
To come to the point I'm wanting to raise, that it is not necessary to say that the comprehensive national power rests only in GDP or your control of the world sea lanes or thing. You have to compete in which area that you can get better and compete best. And that
Yeah.
is the advantage they like to take. We, I come home now, understand the Chinese are got large comprehensive national power. They are an adversary country. Their attitude is not likely to change. They are tying us down by the kind of development they are doing across the borders. They have got military strength. They have technological strength. We will take some time to match up. But asymmetrically large nations in last 75 years have lost wars with asymmetrically poorer nations.
Yep.
Vietnam with China, Afghanistan and USSR, Afghanistan and US, Vietnam and United States. Even in Korea, it was a kind of a stalemate. It is how you want to compete. We have to learn the idea of having relationship with China. We can't get out of the economic relationships, but we do have an idea as to where we can compete and do better, and where Chinese will look up to us. We have great advantages. We have great potential.
Yep.
We have
Yep.
we are growing. We need to reach their potential. We have a peninsula with just 2,000 kilometers into the Indian Ocean. Great amount of advantage that we have in the Indian Ocean advantage there. We need to say where can our strengths be honed up to a level that they compete with any one of the nations of the world, and where they look up to us because this is an area where India has stolen a march on. And we should say,
Hmm.
okay, we are masters in that line. We don't have to compete in every issue that exists here in
Absolutely.
corporate.
Hmm. Hmm.
Yeah,
You fight to
go
your
ahead.
advantage, sir. Absolutely. You fight to your advantage. I think that is very wise advice. And the bottom line, I think, which I pick up from your this thing is, yeah, fair enough. China may be going into the dustbin, agreed, but don't take them lightly, because a declining China would be more dangerous than an emerging China. You know, an emerging China will just say, "ठीक है यार, छोड़ो." A declining China will not want to take anything in their stride. A declining China will not sit quiet. So that presents a different sort of danger.
And to a corollary to you, any nation that acquires comprehensive national power, such a large quantum of it in a short while, may always be tempted to use it to try it out.
Correct? Absolutely, sir. On that note, sir, it's always insightful to talk to you. I think your arguments make a lot of sense, and I think one can keep cutting the legs of the Chinese, and I love doing that personally as well. But somebody is, one must also remain pragmatic with regards to the threat that they do pose. Of course, they are also worried about the blowback in case they do something. That's fine, but that shouldn't keep us in a sense of superiority or anything like that, or complacency. That's the word I'm looking for. So thank you for reminding us that, sir, and I hope to catch up with you very soon once again. Till then, sir, Jai Hind.
Swati.